Semester 1 test review covering modules 1 through 6. Question 1. Solve 31 equals 7p minus 4 for p. So they're asking us to get p by itself and determine what p is going to equal. So the first step is I want to get the p's by itself, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And this is going to give us 35 equals 7p. The opposite of multiplying by 7 is divide by 7, so I want to divide by 7 to get p by itself. That means p is going to equal 5. Question 2. Write an equation for the following sentence. 20 minus the quotient of 4 and x is the same as twice x. So I'm just going to go right in order from what they tell me. It says 20, so I'm going to write 20 minus, and what am I subtracting from 20? I'm subtracting the quotient. Now the quotient is the answer to a division problem. So what am I dividing? It tells me right here 4 divided by x. And that's going to be the same as, which means it equals twice x, which is 2x. So this would be my equation, 20 minus 4 divided by x equals 2x. Now you could have also written it this way. So 20 minus, and then you could have written 4 divided by x equaling 2x. And if we were to solve it, just remember we follow order of operations, which multiplication and division goes first. Question 3. Solve 2 minus 8x equals negative 8 for x. So here we need to get x by itself to see what x is going to equal. So right now I have ax combined. I need to get everything away from that. So I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. And that's going to give us a negative ax equals negative 8 minus 2 is a negative 10. Now to get x by itself, I'm going to divide everything by negative a. Make sure you take that negative with. That leaves us with x equaling negative 10 divided by negative a is going to be 10 divided by a. Just remember when I have a negative divided by a negative, it always becomes a positive. Next one, solve 1 over a x minus 4 equals 9, and we're going to solve for x. Now I'm going to rewrite this as x divided by a, because 1 times x is x, and then I'm dividing by a, minus 4 equals 9. Now I need to get the x by itself, but before I can do that, I need to get rid of this 4. So the opposite of subtracting 4 is adding 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and I get 13 equals x divided by a. Now the opposite of dividing by a is multiplying by a. So if I multiply the left side by a, I multiply the right side by a. And I'm left with x equaling 13a. Question 4. Solve 5y equals 12y plus 16 divided by 4 for y. So I want to get y by itself. But the first thing I want to do is get rid of any fractions. And to get rid of fractions, I have to multiply by the denominator. So for here, I'm going to multiply this side by 4, because that's going to get rid of the denominator here. But whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So that's going to give us 20y equals 12y plus 16. Now I can get all the y's together. So I'm going to subtract 12y on both sides. And now I'm left with 8y equals 16. And to get y by itself, I'm going to divide by 8. And y is going to equal 2. Now there is another way of doing this one. So if I write this as 5y equals, now over here on the right hand side, the common factor in the numerator and denominator is 4. So if I factor out a 4 in the numerator, I would get 3y plus 4. Divide that all by 4. the 4's divide out, and I'm left with 5y equals 3y plus 4. I can subtract 3y, and now I'm left with 2y equals 4. And to get y by itself, divided by 2, and I still get y equaling a positive 2. So there's more than one way you can solve it, but as long as you're following the order of operations and that you are doing the same thing on both sides of the equal sign. Question 5. Solve and graph. This is an absolute value equation. So the first thing I want to do is make sure the absolute value is by itself, which it is. And I need a case 1 and case 2. Case 1 has a positive form, which is what they give us. So 3x minus 4 equals 2. And I need the negative form, 3x minus 4 equals a negative 2. And the reason why we're doing a positive and negative, because we're trying to find the distance from 0. To the right of 0 is positive, and to the left of 0 is negative. So we're going to have two possible solutions here. So to solve for x on the left, I'm going to add 4. And this is going to give us 3x equals 6. And to get x by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 3. X could equal a positive 2. Now on the other side, I would add 4 here. And I would have 3x equals a positive 2. To get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 3. And x could equal a positive 2/3. Now to check it very quickly, if I put 2 in for x, 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 4 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2, which my statement is true. If I put 2/3 in for x, 3 times 2/3 is 6/3, which is 2. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Now the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. 2 does equal 2. Therefore, these are my two solutions. Now on a number line, to graph it, I'm going to have, so say this will be 1, let's just say this will be 0, and let's just count by thirds. So this will be 1/3, 2/3, 1, 1 and 1/3, 1 and 2/3, 2. So this is 1 here. So I'm just going to have a point at 2/3 because it can equal 2/3 and a point at 2. Question 6. Solve this proportion for x. Now when I have proportions or ratios equaling a ratio, I'm going to use the method of cross multiplication. So I'm going to cross multiply here. So I have 5 times 8, which is 40, minus 5x. So I'm just distributing the 5, equals, and I multiply the other direction. 2 times 13 is 26. Now to get my x's by itself, I'm going to subtract 40 on both sides. And this is going to give us a negative 5x equaling a negative 14. And then I'm going to divide by a negative 5 on both sides. And I'm left with x equaling a positive 14/5. Now you can always verify this by plugging that back in for x. So now if I were to put this, get my calculator here. And if I did 8 minus, and then we would have 14/5, so 14 divided by 5. This is going to give us 5/2, and if I did, or 5.2, so if I did 2 divided by 5.2, it's going to give me this decimal, and if I put that as a fraction, you get 5/13, which is what I have listed here. Question 7. In a recent survey conducted by the American Veterinary Medical Association, about 40.1% of households in the survey own a dog. The survey had a margin of error of about plus or minus 0.6%. If there are 128.6 million households in the US, estimate the range of US households that own a dog. So to solve this one, I know it's going to be 0.6% above 40.1 and 0.6% below. So the lowest point, we're going to do 40.1% minus 0.6%. And that's going to give us 39.5%. So 39.5%, that's on the low end. And on the high end, I'm going to do 40.1% plus 0.6%, and that's going to give us 40.7%. Now to find the range, they're telling us the total amount of households there are that took the survey, or that who have a dog, or actually how many households are in the US. So I'm going to take 128.6, and we're going to multiply that by the first percentage, and we have to put that as a decimal, which would be 0.35 or 395. So if we get our calculator here, we have 128.6, and we're going to multiply that by 0.395. That's going to give us 50.797. So let's just round this to the nearest tenth. So we'll say 50.8 million. So 50.8 million households. And on the high end, we would have 128.6. And we're going to multiply that by 0.407. We'll grab our calculator again. I'm going to put what I had in here before and then just change the numbers. So this is 407. Hit enter, and that'll be 52.3. So 52.3 million households. Question 8. Solve 5a minus 2b equals 15 for a. That means we want to get everything away from the a. Our first step is to get rid of this minus 2b, so I'm going to add 2b to both sides. And this is going to give us 5a equals 15 plus 2b. And to get a by itself, the opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing everything by 5. So I'm going to divide each part by 5 because I can simplify that. And a is going to equal 3 plus 2/5 b, or you could write it as 3 plus 2b over 5. And that's what our a would equal. Question 9. For h of x equaling negative 6x squared plus 18x plus 36, find each value. So they're telling me in this first one, x is going to be 2. So if I put 2 in for x, so I'm going to have 6. So negative 6 times 2 squared plus 18 times 2 plus 36. This will be 4 times negative 6 is negative 24 plus 36 plus 36. 36 plus 36 is 72, and 72 minus 24 is going to give us 48. Now the second part, they're telling us put 4 in for x first, so that's what I'm going to do. So I have negative 6 times 4 squared plus 18 times 4 plus 36. And then they want us to put a 1 in for x, which would be negative 6 times 1 squared plus 18 times 1 plus 36. And then they want us to subtract our two answers. So first off, let's get our calculator again. So we have a negative 6 times 4 squared plus, I'm going to put in parentheses 18 times 4, and parentheses plus 36, and this is going to give us 12. And then the other side we have negative 6 times 1 squared, which is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 18 is going to give us 12. 12 plus 36 is going to give us 48. And they want us to subtract our answers. So if I subtract that, that's going to give us a negative 36. Question 10. Determine the end behavior of the function and then identify which points are relative maxima. So the end behavior, we have two statements. So when x is positive and when x is negative, my y's are positive here and positive here. So as x approaches positive infinity, y approaches positive infinity, and as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches positive infinity. Now you can use increase and decrease, so this would be increase, increase, this would be decrease, and this would be decrease. Now which points are relative maxima? So a high point. B is a maxima, which just means it is a high point. Question 11. Find the solution of the equation below. So find the solution, it just means solve for x. So to solve for x, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And now I have 8x equals 16. To get x by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 8. And x is going to equal 2. Question 12. Determine the following from the graph. So we have a graph listed below here. We want to determine, is it linear or nonlinear? Well, I see curves in it, so this is nonlinear. Is it a function, which means does it pass the vertical line test? It does pass the vertical line test, so it is a function. Is it continuous or discrete? Discrete means it's separate points that are not connected. Continuous means there are no gaps, jumps, or breaks in the line. This one is continuous. And then it's symmetrical. It is symmetrical because I could draw a line of symmetry straight through here, and it's mirror images on both sides. And it's symmetrical around the point where x is equal to 1.5. Question 13. Graph the equation on a coordinate plane. Now for here, I have it in standard form. And if it's in standard form, you can easily graph with the intercepts. So if I did 2x equaling 14, I can now find what the x-intercept is by dividing by 2. The x-intercept is when y is 0. When y is 0, x is going to equal a positive 7. So I'm going to put a point at 7 on the x-axis. Then to find the y-intercept, I'm going to have negative 7y equals 14. Divide by negative 7. When x is 0, y is going to be a negative 2. So I'm going to put a negative 2 here. Now I can draw my line from my equation. And here would be my linear graph of that equation. Question 14. Determine the rate of change, or in other words, the slope from the given table. Now here you can use the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And I can choose this as my x1, x2, y1, y2. So I would have 9 minus 15 divided by 2 minus 1, which is going to give us a negative 6 over 1, which means our slope is a negative 6. Next, question 15 says write each equation in slope-intercept form. So that means we get y by itself. So I'm going to add 10x to both sides. And that gives us 2y equaling 10x plus 12. To get y by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 2. And in slope-intercept form, we have y equals 5x plus 6. Question 16, we're going to write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form with the given slope and a y-intercept. So I would have y equals, the slope is -4, so -4x, and the y-intercept is a -9. Question 17. Describe how the graph of each function is related to the graph of the parent function. So these are all linear functions, which the parent function of a linear function is y equals x. So let me put that in there. Here's the parent function. We want to know how does it change from y equals x to g of x equaling -1/6x. Okay, so we know there's no translations. It didn't slide up, down, right, or left because I don't see anything after the x. I do know there's a dilation, and because the dilation is in the parentheses, that means this is going to be a horizontal. So we have horizontal. And because the absolute value of -1/6 is 1/6, it's a fraction. Now, if I think about the slope here, the slope means I'm going up 1 to the right 6. So if I'm going to be moving it horizontally, stretching it or compressing it, I could stretch it horizontally. So this is a horizontal stretch. So remember, if it's in the parentheses, if your A, which is your dilation, is in the parentheses, it's a horizontal. And if it's greater than 0 but less than 1, it's going to be a horizontal stretch. Now there is a negative, which tells us there's a reflection. So we know that we're going to be reflecting. And since this is going to be affecting our y, so it affects our y, that means it's reflected over the x-axis. Now the second one, we have g of x equaling -5 times x. Our a, which is our 5, is on the outside of the parentheses, so this is a vertical. This is vertical dilation, and the absolute value of -5 is 5, which is greater than 1, so this is a vertical stretch. Now again, I can use the slope, so it goes up 5/1, which means if I can only do it vertically, that would be a vertical stretch. There is a negative, which means I am reflecting it. And it's reflected over, since this one's affecting, this is going to affect my y. So if it affects my y coordinate, it goes from a positive y to a negative y. So this is over the x-axis. Now going back to this first one, because I had the negative on the inside of the parentheses, it's attached to my x, so it's affecting my x coordinate. So if it affects my x coordinate, this one is actually going to be going across the y-axis. Let me change this one. There's a reflection over the y-axis for this first one. So remember, if the negative is on the inside of the parentheses, it goes over the y-axis. When it's on the outside of the parentheses, it goes over the x-axis. Question 18, graph the absolute value function on the coordinate plane. So for this one, the base format with the transformations would be f of x equaling a times the absolute value of x minus h plus a k, and h and k is your vertex. Since I have a +2, it's really x minus a -2, so really it goes to the left 2 and down 1. So if I go down to the left 2 from 0, 0 to the left 2, I'm at -2 and down 1, I would have a point here. And then my slope, treat this as my A as my slope, my dilation. I go down 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right 1. Or I can go down 5 and to the left 1. And then here would be my absolute value. Let me do that one, that line a little bit better. Now you could always just choose points to put in here, but just know that you could use the dilation to determine the slope of your lines. Next, question 19. Larry opened a savings account with $1,800. The bank offers an annual simple interest rate of 5%. Find the amount in Larry's account after 7 years. Now the equation would be the account balance equals the principal times 1 plus the rate as a decimal times the time in years. So now to solve this one, I need to solve for A when the principal amount is 1,800 times 1 plus the rate as a decimal, which would be 0.05 times the time in years is 7. So again, simple interest rate means you are just adding the interest to your principal amount. So the interest earned would always be the same every time. So now on our calculator, we can type in 1,800 times parentheses, and it'd be 1 plus 0.05 times 7, end parentheses, and if I hit enter, it gives me $2,430. See, the account balance is $2,430. Next, Larry opened a savings account with $3,500. The account earns 8.75% simple interest annually. After how many years will the balance of the account be $6,000? Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So we're going to do the same thing, use the same formula, except for we know the account balance. The account balance is $6,000 equals the principal amount is $3,500. But this time we're trying to solve for the number of years, which is our t. So this will be 1 plus the rate as a decimal. So this will be 0.0875. So let me write that a little bit more clear. And then a t here. Now we need to get the parentheses by itself, so I'm going to divide by 3,500. And we have 6,000 divided by 3,500. So we have 6,000 divided by 3,500. And this is going to equal 1 plus 0.0875 t. We're going to subtract 1 on both sides. Now on my calculator, if I do this very quickly, I have 6,000 divided by 3,500. If I want to put that as a fraction, I just hit math and it's number 1. I have 12 sevenths. So this is going to be 12 sevenths minus 7 sevenths. Why minus 7 sevenths? Because I'm subtracting 1. And 1 can be written in sevenths as 7 sevenths, which will give us 5 sevenths. And 5 sevenths gives us a longer decimal of 0.71428574143. Now I normally don't want to round until the very end, so that's what I'm going to do right here. So I have 5 sevenths equals 0.0875. So if I grab my calculator, if I subtract this by 1, which was my 5 sevenths, I get that answer. And then we're going to divide everything by 0.0875. and then round to the nearest tenth, which will give us 8.2 years. So this is a t here. So we divided this all by 0.0875. And we had t is roughly 8.2 years. Next, Emmanuel is practicing golf as part of his high school golf team. Each week he plays a full round of golf and records his total score. His scores for the first 5 weeks are shown in the table. We are going to use our graphing calculator to write a line of best fit, and then we're going to determine the correlation coefficient, and then determine afterwards what his predicted score would be after 10 weeks. So to do this, we're going to grab our calculators. Just clear everything. We have to make sure our diagnostic is on. So to do that, you're going to hit second, 0, which is our catalog, and we're going to scroll all the way down until we get to diagnostic on. Hit enter. Hit enter, and when you see done, you know your diagnostic is on, because that's going to be important for us to identify our correlation coefficient. So now we need to enter the data into our table. So we're going to hit Stat, Edit. And if you have data in here, just go up to L1, hit Clear, and then hit Enter. So I'm going to type in the numbers that they have here. So 1, Enter, 2, Enter, 3, Enter, 4, Enter, and 5, Enter. Then our next one, we're going to put the scores. So 112, Enter, 107, Enter, 108, Enter, 104, Enter, and 98, Enter. Once that's in, we're going to hit Stat again. We're going to go to Calculate. We know this is going to be linear, so we're going to do the linear equation, so number 4. And we're going to hit Enter. And this is going to give us our equation, our line of best fit here. You'll notice that our correlation coefficient is 0.939. So we'll round to 2 decimal places, so that looks pretty good there. So our line of best fit will be y equals negative 3.1 plus 115.1. So y equals a negative 3.1x plus 115.1. And our correlation coefficient is negative 0.94. So let's do that. Our R is roughly a negative 0.94. Now we're going to use the equation to determine what Emmanuel's score would be after 10 weeks. So x would be the number of weeks. So I would have y equals a negative 3.1 times 10 plus 115.1. And that's going to give us 115.1 plus a negative 31, because negative 3.1 times 10 is a negative 31. And that's going to give us an 84.1. So that would be roughly his score after 10 weeks. Question 22. Solve and graph the inequality. So here I want to get our a's to one side, so I'm going to subtract 2a. And I'm left with negative 5 is less than a, or you can write it as a is greater than negative 5. And to graph it, I have a point at negative 5. It's an open circle because it cannot equal it, and it's got to be greater than, which means it goes to the right. Question 23, we're going to solve and graph this one. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 3/7 is multiplying by the reciprocal, which is a negative 7/3. And I'm going to do that on both sides. And that gives us x. And because we're multiplying by a negative number, we're going to flip the symbol, so it's less than. 24 divided by 3 is 8. And then 8 times negative 7 is negative 56. So x is less than negative 56. So I have a point at negative 56. It's going to be an open circle because it cannot equal it, and it's less than, so it goes to the left. Question 23, or 24. A survey of adults aged 18 to 23 years old by Gallup Incorporated found that 51% live with their parents. The margin of error is 2%. Let X be the actual percent and find the range of adults aged 18 to 23 who live with their parents. Now, to write the absolute value inequality, we know it's going to be the absolute value of X minus the middle number, or the average. And this is going to be less than or equal to the margin of error. So now if I put the numbers in, I would have X minus, the average is 51, and the margin of error is 2%. So that's less than or equal to 2. So now if I take it out, this is an and, so I have X minus 51 is less than or equal to 2, but greater than or equal to a negative 2. So I have my two cases. So I'm going to add 51 to both sides. And the percentage is X has to be less than or equal to 53%, but greater than or equal to 49%. Question 25. Write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through 8, 2 and is perpendicular to the graph of y equals 1/2 x plus 1. Now, perpendicular slopes have negative reciprocals. So if I flip the slope here, I would have 2 over 1, and then I change the sign. So it's a negative 2 over 1. Now I need to choose an x and y so I can find the b. They gave me an x and a y here, so when y is 2 and 8 is my x, I would have negative 16 plus b equals 2. To get b by itself, I'm going to add 16 to both sides, and I would have a y-intercept of 18. So the equation that's perpendicular would be y equals a negative 2x plus 18. Question 26. Graph 2y plus 6 is greater than or equal to 0. So I want to get y by itself. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 6. So now you have 2y is greater than or equal to a negative 6. Divided by 2. My inequality is going to be y is greater than or equal to a negative 3. So I put a point at negative 3 on the y-axis. The slope is 0, so I know it's a horizontal line. Because it has the equal to, it's going to be a solid line, so a solid horizontal line. Greater than means it's going to be above the line, so everything above the line and on the line is a solution. Question 27. Solve the absolute value inequality and then graph it. Since this one is in greater than, I know I'm going to use the keyword or. So I'm going to write two cases. So case 1 is 3m plus 12 is greater than or equal to 15, or case 2 is 3m plus 12 is less than or equal to a negative 15. So we flip the symbol and change the sign. So now I solve for m by subtracting 12, and now I have 3m is greater than or equal to 3. Divide by 3. I now have m is greater than or equal to 1, or on this side I'm going to subtract 12, and now I have 3m is less than or equal to a negative 27. Divide by 3. I have m can be less than or equal to a negative 9. Now to graph this one, I have negative 9 here. I have a positive 1 here. They are 10 apart. Half of 10 is 5. So if I go 5 in, this will be at negative 4. That's the middle number. Or you can count however way you want in between. So I have a filled in circle at negative 9, has to be less than or equal to that, so it goes to the left. Or a filled in circle at 1, it's got to be greater than or equal to that, so it goes to the right. Question 28. Use a system of equations in your graphing calculator to solve negative 3.2x minus 5.8 equaling 2.8x plus 7, and then round to the nearest hundredth. So a system of equations, there are two equations, one on each side. So one of them is going to be y equals a negative 3.2x minus 5.8, and the other one's going to be y equals 2.8x plus 7. So we're going to grab our calculator, and we're going to hit our y equals, and we're going to just clear everything that we have on our calculator, and we're going to type in our equations. So we have a negative 3.2 x minus 5.8. So that's our first one. And our second one is 2.8 x plus 7. Now if I hit graph, here's our first linear equation. Here's the second one. I want to find out what is my x here. Where does it cross here? Because that's what my x is going to be. So I hit second, trace, find the intersection point, so number 5. First curve, which means my first line. Second curve means my second line. Guess, hit third. It tells us that it's going to cross when x is a negative 2.13 with the 3 repeating. So it says round to the nearest hundredth. So x is going to equal roughly a negative 2.13. Question 29. Jorge's comic book collection consists of single issues that cost $4 each and paperback collections that cost $12 each. He has 100 books in all. His collection cost him $616. Write and solve a system of equations to determine how many single issues and paperbacks Jorge has in his collection. So I'm going to use single is my x and paperback as my y. So I have x plus y has to give me a total of 100 books, and the other one we have 4x, because $4 for each single plus $12 for each paperback, so that's 12y, has to equal a total of $616. Now you can either use substitution or elimination. I'm going to use elimination here, so I'm going to multiply this top one by a negative 4, and I'm going to be eliminating the x so I can find my y. So I distribute the negative 4, and that's going to give us a negative 4x minus 4y equals a negative 400. And this is going to give us 8y equals 216. To get y by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 8. And now I have y, which again, or y is our paperback. So if I grab my calculator, I'm going to do 216 divided by 8. This is going to give us 27. So that means we have 27 paperback books, and our x, I'm going to put it up in this top one here. So what is our x when our y is 27 and they have to add up a total of 100? So I just have to subtract 27 on both sides, and x would give us 73. So we would have 73 single issues and 27 paperback collections. Question 30, solve the system of equations below. Again, you can either use elimination or substitution. This one, since it's in standard form, I'm going to use elimination. And I'm going to eliminate the y's because the y's have opposite signs, and the common multiple, or the common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. So I'm going to multiply the top one by 3 and the bottom one by 5. So this is going to give us 30x plus 15y equals 90. And then I have 25x minus 15y is equal to a negative 35. And combine straight down, this is going to give us 55x. The y's eliminate, equals 65. Divide everything by 55. And I would have x equaling, grab our calculators here. We have 65 divided by 55 gives us 1.18 with the 1/8 repeating. I can change that to a fraction. We don't want to round here, so this is going to give us 13/11. And then to find my y, all I need to do is put 13/11 in for one of these. I'm going to do I'll do the top one. So we have 10 times 13/11. We're going to add 5y to it, and then equals 30. So grab our calculators here. We have 10 times 13, which is 130, divided by 11. It's equal to 11.81 repeating. We're going to take our 30, and we're going to be subtracting 130/11 on both sides. So I'm going to do minus second answer. That's going to give us 18.18 repeating. And then we're going to divide everything by 5, because the opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. And I get 3.63 repeating. Hit math, enter, and we get 40/11. Now this one, you're having fractions involved. Not all of them are going to be this difficult or this confusing with fractions such as these big fractions. But either way, you can still solve by using elimination or substitution. Question 31. Determine if each point below is a solution to the system of linear inequalities. Now all we need to do is plug these in for, these are going to be our r's and this is our m. We just want to make sure these are true for both statements. So if I put 2 plus 17, that gives me 19. 19 is less than or equal to 20, so that is correct. Now if I did 7 times 2, that's 14, plus 8.5 times 17. That has to be greater than or equal to 150, which it does. So this is a solution. The next one, 4 plus 7 is 11. That's less than 20, so we know it works there. Grab our calculator. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 7 times 8.5, so 8.5 times 7 has to be greater than or equal to 150. It is not, so no, this is not a solution. Again, for the solution, they have to be a common solution in both of these areas. If I put 5 plus 15, that's 20, so it can be equal to 20, so we know that works for there. But let's try, see if it works in the second one. So 5 times 7 is 35, plus 8.5 times 15 gives us 162, so yes, that works. This other one, 8 plus 13 is 21. It does not work for this one because it has to be less than 20, so I know, no, this is not a solution for that one. Question 32 and 33. 32 says 4 times a number, so I'm going to do 4n, minus twice another number, so I'm going to do twice m, is negative 16. Then it says the sum of the two numbers, so n plus m is going to equal a negative 1. Write and solve a system of equations to solve the two numbers. So I have my two systems. I'm going to multiply this bottom one by 2 so I can use elimination. So this will give us 2n plus 2m equals a negative 2. And I'm going to put this top one underneath here. So this would be 4n minus 2m equals a negative 16. And combine like terms, and I get 6n. The m's cancel off, equals a negative 18. Divide by 6, n is going to equal a negative 3. If n is a negative 3, that means m would have to equal a positive 2. And I can verify that because negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Negative 12 minus 4 is negative 16. So these would be our two numbers. Question 33, find the slope and y-intercept of the line that passes through the 2 points listed. So I need to find the slope. So I'm going to do 6 minus 4 divided by negative 2 minus a negative 5. Again, I'm just using y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. This is going to give us 2 over 3. So if our slope is 2/3, I'm going to choose a point. Doesn't matter. And you can either use the point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, or you can use y equals mx plus b. I'm going to use y equals mx plus b because I already have my equation in slope-intercept form. But actually, we need to know the slope and the y-intercept, so that's why I'm going to put it in slope-intercept form here. So the slope is 2/3. Now to find the y-intercept, I just need to choose an x and y. I'm going to choose this point here. So when y is 6, my slope is 2/3, and my x is negative 2. I need to find the b. This will give us negative 4/3 plus b equals 6. To get b by itself, I'm going to add 4/3 to both sides. 6 as in thirds is 18/3. 18/3 plus 4/3 gives us 22/3. So our y-intercept is 22/3 and our slope is 2/3. And question 34, graph in the system of inequalities. So this first one, it says x is greater than or equal to negative 3. So I'm going to put a point at negative 3 on the x-axis because it crosses that one. The slope is 0. So here I would have the slope is undefined, so I don't have a slope here. So I would have a vertical line. It is a solid line because it can equal negative 3. So I'm going to draw a vertical line here. And this other one, treat this like as y equals 1/3 x plus 2. So I have a point at 2 on the y-axis. Use a slope of up 1 to the right 3. Or I can go down 1 to the left 3. This one cannot equal it, so I know it's going to be a dashed line. And then where do I shade? Well, it has to be, y has to be greater than the red. So if it's greater than the red, it's either up here or up here. But it has to be greater than the black line, which means it has to be to the right of the black line, which will be just over here. So this part is the solution to that system of inequalities. So that is the question, or those are the types of questions you can expect on a semester test.